Hey everyone, and welcome to the Let's Do More show. I'm Chris Rufflin, and I'm so glad you're here. This podcast is all about powerful personal stories of resilience, recovery, and overcoming life's toughest challenges. Here we dive deep into real life experiences on perseverance and personal growth. We'll explore what it takes to develop a positive mindset and how to transform adversity into strength. Along the way, I'll be sitting down with inspiring individuals, including celebrities in recovery, to help break the stigma of addiction, talk about mental health, and provide hope to those who need it most. Let's Do More. It's about finding hope in the dark moments, surviving the unsurvivable, and learning how to manifest the life you desire. We'll uncover insights and lessons that not only help us push through life's toughest times, but also turn those experiences into a force for good in our communities. So whether you're looking for motivation, healing, or just a reminder that you're not alone, you're in the right place. Let's do more. Okay, welcome back to the Let's Do More show. I'm Chris Rufflin, and I'm the co-creator of this show, and really excited today. As a lot of you know, as listeners to the show, that we really focus around, stories of perseverance, stories of growth, getting through hardships. And my guest here today actually runs an extremely important piece of, this process in recovery, as well as just life in general. I think that a lot of us have felt not so good or not comfortable in our own skin, and she runs a suicide awareness foundation. I've got Brandy on the line here today, and I'm going to kind of go into it with her and let her share her story and how things happened. And hopefully, even if one person takes away one takeaway from this podcast, it's going to be worth it. We're definitely teamed up here to help save some lives. So, Brandy, welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit. You run the Promise to Live Foundation, right?
I do.
So, and we'll talk about a little bit about what you guys do and how you get the message out there. Now, I always like to start with the backstory, right? What is it that prompted you to start this foundation in the first place? There's always a personal story, I find, in relation to anything like this that's based on service.
Yeah, because it's way too hard for a normal person who doesn't have a backstory, right? Many times if it wasn't so personal to me.
Oh yeah, you have to have the passion. Absolutely.
It was about 4 years ago. Went to bed, and in the middle of the night, I hear banging on the door, and I'm woke up to police knocking on my door asking me, "Where's your daughter?" And I was really surprised, and thankfully her friend had the courage to call 911, and officers came, and we found her before she had passed. She had a suicide attempt. We got her to Primary Children's Hospital. We didn't know for 2 days if she was going to make it, or if she did make it, if she was going to have long-term issues or disabilities. And this wasn't the first time. It was actually the second time, but we never talked about the first time because I was a single parent. I was running a video production and media company. I'm an Army veteran. I worked in law enforcement. I knew all the signs. I taught suicide prevention. From the time I was 12, I had a suicide attempt, and I was very passionate about mental health and suicide prevention. So I had actually gone and I had taught that. But then when my 12-year-old did it, the shame, the fear, the stigma, the hurt, all of it was just way too much. And we buried it like a dirty secret and expected it to go away without really getting help and training and education. And so 2 years later, it reared its head again. And it was very traumatic. When we got to the hospital, we got to Primary Children's, they didn't even have a bed for her. They said they had so many kids attempting suicide that day. They had no beds. And I remember being in the, once we got into a room, they were in there and working with her and on her and stuff. And I was just crying, how do we get here again? And the doctors and the nurses, they were in the same boat. I had a couple of them sit there and cry with me. They're like, we don't know what is going on. We've never seen anything like this. It's a tragic, tragic problem. The next day, there was another 10 or so. I mean, they had almost 24 suicide attempts within about a 24-hour period of time that I was there.
Right.
Now, this is what I heard.
They deal with this every day, all day, every week, all week, right?
And this is one hospital in the region.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're there, and, I volunteered. My background is, I was a broadcast journalist in the Army, graduated high school early, joined the military, was a reporter for Fox News at 20 years old, worked in TV news for a long time. I built my own video production and media company. And then I launched a nonprofit called Good Deed Revolution in 2015. I'm used to being in the media. I'm used to, doing a lot and being an entrepreneur. But when all this happened, it just it changed everything for me. I also volunteer and do a lot of service projects. So I was volunteering at the hospital doing Nobody Dies Alone and spiritual care. This huge hospital with all the trauma. They had one part-time chaplain. So I volunteered kind of as a chaplain and doing the Nobody Dies Alone program. I sat with a lot of people. It's much different when you're looking at your loved one, your baby, your child.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Knowing if they're going to make it. And I was just begging God. I was begging for a second chance, and I was feeling so defeated. And I went on the night after, and I was in the car, and I just had a breakdown in my car. And I got on my social media page, my personal Facebook page, and I did the most vulnerable video of my life. And I just said, I'm not sure if she's going to make it. And if she does, I need help. Right. Where do I go? What do I do? And I know some of you have been through it because I've seen, bits and pieces, but when you're in the middle of crisis, it's hard to see beyond crisis.
Right. And I think you're right. The personal, like we were talking before, right? As far as starting a foundation, it's not an easy feat. Doing all that service work is not easy by any means. It takes time. It takes time away from your family, other passions, work stuff, whatever you've got. But when you have a personal story behind it or something that's happening, especially something with your own kid, I've got 4 children. I've got 2 that struggle with substance use disorder as well. One of them we've had in treatment a few times. I'll never forget the day, thank God it didn't go to the level that you had to experience with your kiddo. But we got a call from the police that she was found naked in a bathtub with a man that they knew, type of thing. And we had to rush to the hospital and found her with blood alcohol level. It was crazy. And the same kind of thing. I remember sitting there, in the waiting room, and my wife's in the room with her, and I was just sitting. I couldn't even get on my Facebook. It's a heavy thing. Yeah, it's a heavy thing. And I think loved ones who have somebody in that spot, it's different as a parent. It's also different as a family member. It's different as a friend. Right. And they all have these different levels of pain that comes with it. When was the defining moment for you where you said, hey, I'm going to take some action to fight against this? So you get your daughter, we get some help, kind of get back on top of that. Hopefully she's been able to get a grip on it here for good. And
yeah. And I have a good update, but essentially, that video I did went viral. They had 12,000 views overnight. I had hundreds of messages in my inbox from people I would have never expected, people who they've got it all together saying, hey, I've struggled, I've lost someone, whatever it was. And I was blown away at that. And the next day, my friends at NBC reached out and said, hey, we saw your video. Would you share your story on the news? And frankly, I was a little bit insulted. I was like, I'm in the middle of the fire. You guys want me to share the worst moment of my entire life? How could you? If it bleeds, it leads environment from media and news. And so I was pretty upset. And I just said, no, I'm not willing to do that. But it was later that afternoon where I was just begging God for a second chance. Just please, I'll do anything. Just give me a second chance. And I heard very loud and clear, whatever people's belief systems are. But for me, inspiration, guidance, prompting, I got this. Brandy, I'll give you a second chance. There will not be a third. What are you going to do? And I remember at that moment just saying, I'll do anything you want me to do, I will do. I just want my daughter.
Yeah.
And within an hour, she woke up and she was functional. And I was holding her hand and I said, are you glad you woke up this time, or do you really wish you would have died? And she said, Mom, I didn't really want to die. It was just too late. And what I've learned, Chris, is people don't want to die. They just want to stop the pain, but they don't know how to stop the pain without the Band-Aid, with death or whatever it is associated with it. And so at that moment, I thought, okay, I got my second chance. And I went back, and this was a long process. She was in the hospital quite a while. She was in inpatient, 24/7 for a month or so, and then a day treatment. Anyway, it was 2 weeks after that moment is kind of when it was that moment. But then it was 2 weeks later, I got a call from NBC again saying, hey, Brandy, will you share your story on the news? And I was like, I don't want to do it. I was terrified. And I was like, am I being challenged? I said I'd do anything. God, is it asking me? I was like, come on, man, I didn't mean anything. I just meant most things. So,
What do you mean by anything?
and I reluctantly did it. And what I said, Chris, is on the news, I said, if you're watching right now, stop what you're doing and go ask your child if they're suicidal. Don't beat around the bush. Honest questions get honest answers. And right after that aired, I had a message from a father, and he reached out and he said, you just saved my daughter's life. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I watched her story on the news. I went to go check on her. She had already written her suicide note. She was in the process of ending her life, and we are at the ER right now. Thank you. And I was just like blown away. And I thought, holy smokes. So then I got another message from a father who said, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story. We talked to our 15-year-old son, and he confessed he had a plan to end his life. This weekend, we're getting him
Right.
help.
Yeah, I think, vulnerability is so key in these moments. And, I'm probably going to compare a lot of what we're talking about to addiction recovery, because it does go hand in hand.
Oh, yeah.
I had a substantial amount of time in sobriety and relapsed with a head full of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me, close to 20 relapses and head full of recovery. But I will tell you, with almost every single one of those relapses coming out of it, I absolutely did not want to live. And, everybody you talk to who has survived one of these things, I've had near-death experiences. I've been on life support through that whole challenge. And I remember the time that I actually pulled it off and left my body in the entire thing. And it was absolute panic for me, because you're right. I didn't really want to die. I wanted the pain to stop. I have another friend of mine who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, which is, yes, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And, same thing he says, right? When he survived and they pulled him out of the water, he realized he wanted to live as he's going down in the air.
Second he jumped, he was like, what am I doing? I just made the biggest mistake of my life.
And I think it's amazing how us being vulnerable about situations that maybe, especially here in the state we live in, some of these things can be you might feel like you're going to get judged, right? You might feel the stigma around it is horrible.
The shame.
And it's the same with suicide. Like, what did I do wrong as a parent? Right. And you worry about that stuff. But at the end of the day, I love what you said there about, you prayed to God and you said, I'm willing to do anything. And here it is a couple weeks later, and the anything shows up.
Yeah.
That was very similar for me, by the way, and this show. I'm used to doing public speaking and going out and doing a lot of coaching, consulting. But for the past 10 years, I've really been behind a desk growing other businesses. And there must have been some type of a fear about being vulnerable about my recovery. I've been on Channel 4 a couple of times, with Addicted Utah, and spoke on different things there for them. But, I was sitting there one day and I was in prayer, and it was kind of the same thing. It was like, I will do anything to stay in sobriety this time. What is it going to take? And the clear message I got was share their story. Get out there and share it on a big scale. And everything with this show and with the things that are surrounding the show have really just happened according to God's plan. I'm a very spiritual person. And I think that spiritual rock that we have is a good place to start from. So you decide you're going to take action on this thing. A couple weeks later, you share your story. Yeah. When did you decide to turn it into a full-on foundation and make this something that you're out there, doing?
So I had started my C3, my nonprofit, in 2015 called Good Deed Revolution. We would do good deeds, acts of kindness, pay it forward. After many years of working in TV news, where, most 9 out of 10 stories are devastating, PTSD inducing, and just overall traumatic. It's me showing up on everybody's worst days, and so I wanted to do something that was the good, that could inspire other people. So I had that going. But, during this process, I started the nonprofit in 2015. In 2017, I adopted a little boy from foster care who was born on meth and alcohol stuff. And so I went kind of through that process. In 2018, I was a surrogate and had a baby for a family. And so I'm running my studio. I'm a single mom taking care of my kids. I had 2 old kids. I just adopted a baby from foster care, and then I was a surrogate for a family who couldn't have a kid. And then, my oldest daughter gets into a car accident, got a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. And so for 2 or 3 months, she was struggling really bad. And then, my 12-year-old tried to end her life. So I'm kind of going through this process and just trying to keep my own kids alive. And so my nonprofit just became back burner.
Sure, absolutely.
after my daughter's second suicide attempt, and I'd gotten everything together, and I knew I couldn't do the same thing and expect it to be different. I knew that I had to speak out. And knowing that my story on local news saved 2 people out of 20, 30,000 maybe that saw it, I thought, well, what could we, like, God, what do you want me to do with this? And I felt so inspired by Live Aid from 1985. I mean, I was just a little girl, but I remember when the world came together for the starving children in Africa, and they did this big benefit global concert. And so I thought to myself, the biggest issue plaguing the planet right now is mental health, suicide, addiction, and trauma, right? Like,
it is.
everybody's
Absolutely. Bar none.
And everybody's trying to figure out, how do we solve this? And they're saying we solve it by stopping the stigma. I'm like, okay, well, how do we stop the stigma, and what's being done? So I decided to put together a show through my video production company and through my connections. And we did a show September 10th. We picked that specific date because it's World Suicide Prevention Day. It's the one day the globe comes together for mental health.
So all of September is a mental health awareness month.
Is like the big day. And I said, let's do it. Let's do a show. I don't know what it is, but let's make it entertaining and inspirational. And so we brought in singers, dancers, celebrities, influencers, survivors, experts. And we put on this 3-hour family-friendly show, and we reached 160,000 people.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Then the next year, we did it again. And this year, or that year, we reached 400,000. And last year, we did it for the first time, and we did it in Hollywood, California, on Hollywood Boulevard at the iconic Avalon Theater. And we had actor John Voight there, and we had just some awesome talent. And we reached around 3 million people. And so this year we're going to be doing it there again.
This will be your 4th year doing that.
We're going into our 4th year. Yep. And it just kind of became this process. So what happened was I got back to my studio and I said, well, what's being done in mental health? And why couldn't I find the resources? Why wasn't there a receptacle or a hub that housed resources? And then I found out sort of
why do you have to dig to get people help? I mean, it's such a parallel, not to cut you off, but it's such a parallel. Finally, in recovery, I mean, there's a lot of treatment centers and places to get help, but the waiting lists are getting a little bit better. But the thing with addiction, and much like suicide, you have a very fraction of a second to help somebody. So when the addict reaches out and says, I want to stop this, I need help, you have to act right then. They have to be in a bed right then. And I'm talking within that hour, and I work with USAR and a lot of other foundations and stuff that's our focus was to change that. And it's getting better, but much like suicide, you're the parent who just had this happen with your daughter, and you're literally posting on Facebook to figure out, what can I do? How can I get some help here?
Well, and frustrating thing, Chris, was this, go here, find here. I'm like, my brain is so scrambled right now.
You're already overwhelmed.
I'm in fight mode. I'm just, and I don't want to go everywhere. But then I discovered that money talks and egos and just all the stuff involved in this space. And so my mission was, how do we deliver hope, help, healing, and resources in one place? And what is the power of a promise? So I do want to explain what Promise to Live actually is. Promise to Live is a promise to reach out for help every 40 seconds. Yes. And I bet you the number is even higher. Somebody by suicide. That's just
the documented ones. Exactly. Yeah.
So every 40 seconds, though, somebody's dying by suicide. In 25 or 30 seconds, we ask people to go online to Promise to Live, the number 2, live.org, and make a promise to reach out for help, whether it be to a friend or a family member or NAMI, AFSP, Jed, Trevor, USARA, whatever group it is, or call or text 988. 988's been out 2.5 years, and the last study I saw said 18% of the people know about it. It's the 911 for mental health, 988. So we've been trying to get that out there, and that was a big part of our push. And often too, I'm sure you understand this, but we don't love ourselves enough to want to stick around.
Absolutely.
But if I look you in the eye and say, Chris, I promise I'll reach out for help. Studies show that in generic promises, people are 60% more likely to keep their word. So we feel like this is simple yet significant. So if you can get people to have this open conversation and say, hey, have you thought about hurting yourself? Are you struggling with this? Honest questions get honest answers. That's what I want people to do, and ask that question, make the promise to live. And then we came out with these pocket hugs a year ago. So we asked people to go.
Yeah, these are super cool. You got one you can hold up. Perfect.
Yes. We ask people to go online, make the promise to live. They get a coin to keep and a coin to give. Like when we're doing these in person, we do have and sell these online. We've done them for service projects. But you can see there's our website, Promise to Live, which has a lot of the major resources that people are looking for, national vetted resources in one place. Because I don't care who gets the federal money, grant, sponsorship, or credit. I'm
Right.
the tool that they need when they need it. On the back of our coin, it says, when times are tough and you don't know what to do, here's a hug from me to you. Call or text 988 if you're struggling. We have given out 70,000 pocket hugs this year. And it's a great
Amazing.
tangible thing that you can keep in there. You can hold on to it. It's a reminder that you're loved. I gave one out at the drive-thru today for lunch. I give these out all the time to everybody because, like Kevin said, Kevin, who did jump off the Golden Bridge, he was telling the story. And he said if he walked almost 2 miles from the bus to the bridge.
Is that crazy?
Said, during that
just waiting for help.
He said, if one person acknowledges me, if anybody stops and acknowledges me or asks about me, I won't jump. And he's walking and he's getting there and he's sobbing. Yeah, I think he was like 19, right? And he's just having a breakdown and he's devastated. If one person, and just as he's getting by the bridge, somebody stops and goes, excuse me. And he thinks for a minute, oh, she's going to talk to me. And they said, will you take our picture?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that part of his story. I thought that was the part where it shifted around. I was amazed to hear his story when he shares that he actually did jump, because you're right. And I want to like reiterate something you said too. I know with the numbers with addiction, 3 out of 4 people in America either have an addiction themselves that they're struggling with, or they have a close friend or family member, a loved one that is.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing. We have a lot of parallels in what you and I both do and what we hope to do. Ever since I first got sober in 2017, I've always been a stigma stomping type of a person. I experienced how I was treated differently in the hospital. I experienced how my friends and family didn't know what to do. Many people disappeared from my life because rather than watch somebody die at their own hand in a way, they didn't want to see that pain. And it was like, it's easier just to turn the blind eye. But, I always tell people there's 2 types of people who suffer with substance use disorder. The first type is somebody who needs some consequences, right? Maybe they go to jail, maybe they lose everything, they hit this rock bottom, somehow they're still alive, and they decide to kind of go get help and change their life. But there's also a second type people do not think about, and this fits right in line with what you're sharing, which is the addict or alcoholic who says, I just need someone to tell me that I'm worth living and that I'm loved and that I matter.
Yeah.
And for us, and I've been in that spot, it doesn't matter if it's someone I love saying that, or friend or family member, or if it's literally someone on the street, that right there would have saved my life multiple times. Right. So I think it's cool how you're giving these out to everybody. You're promoting these coins everywhere, giving them out at events, whether somebody's suicidal or not. Spreading that message is what helps change the stigma, right?
And that's part of it. We say, whether or not you're struggling, we want you to make the promise to live. I mean, if it's in 5 minutes from now, 5 years, 5 months, 50 years, maybe you never do. But if you get to that moment, you've thought about it in your mind and you've looked at me and you've said, I promise I'll reach out for help. And that might just be the thing that does it. And, one of the hard things when you talk about the stigma and the shame, I remember I was so embarrassed to talk about it because I just thought my child was so miserable that she'd rather be dead. I must be the world's worst mom. She'd rather kill.
Or she'd have to go there first. Yep.
Yeah. It's all about me, right? Like me. And I don't want people to know because, oh, Brandy works too much. Oh, she's a single mom. Oh, she's a failure. Just all these things that stack up.
Yeah.
And I'll admit in the beginning, I was pretty upset with my daughter too. I was just like, I have worked so hard to give you a good life. I've given you everything I didn't have, like food, shelter, love, vacations. You know what I mean? Like I thought I was doing a pretty good job. And to feel like that wasn't good enough. And then somebody from AFSP shared this story with me, and that's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We were having a conversation. She was doing training and she explained it in a way that I think people should hear, because sometimes it's hard for us, like with addiction or with suicide ideation or mental health. She said the people September 11th that jumped off the Twin Towers, nobody judged them and called them cowards. Nobody said that, they were weak. Nobody, They just said they didn't blame them because they did what they had to do. And she said the people who die by suicide or, in some of these traumatic ways, they feel that same heat. They feel that same fire. They feel the
Exactly.
same gloom and doom. And they feel like their only option at that moment to get the fire behind them to stop, or the smoke or the pain or the imminent doom,
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
take their life.
Yeah. I mean, our brains are amazing. I talk a lot about, thoughts are things and optimism. And, I'm definitely a enthusiastic optimist.
Yeah.
I've had people tell me that's going to be the death of me, is my positive thinking. And it's not. It's actually the life of me. But
Yes.
it's a space when you get in that in your head and you have these things, whether it's addiction or mental health, when it comes to clinical depression and things like that, there is no other escape. There's no other escape that you can see. And I think that's why it's important to have something that you can recall. I love the coin idea. I love the fact that you're getting these out here, and also the website with a centralized place for information that somebody can trust,
Yeah.
where everybody can go. Because part of this disorder or disease that you deal with on a day-to-day basis and fight, part of it is absolutely what's going on for that person. There's also a big part of it, which is what's going on for the people around them.
Yes.
Most people do not have conversations like that with their kids, right? They just, you have to assume everything's fine. And you're a single mom, you're working, you're tail off, you're providing for them. And my current wife was a single mother for 5 years. So I know the background very well. And you guys get used to go, right? And do it all. And, sometimes there's not time to stop. And, it's always okay to stop and check in with somebody.
Right. It's not a sign of weakness. You know that. It's a sign of strength to get the courage to be able to say, hey, I'm not okay, or hey, I need help, or I can't do this on my own. And so I feel like that's a huge part of what we're doing.
Absolutely.
It's simply, every time I open my mouth and talk about this, I never wanted to be the face or the spokesperson. I never saw myself doing this, but I made a promise and I intend to keep it. But every time I talk about it, people come up and they have stories, and they've been directly impacted in one way or another. And I have them reaching out saying, hey, I'm still, I'm struggling. But I think what people don't realize is if we can start talking about this now without the shame, without the fear, without the judgment, then we can actually get something done. Then we can move in a way. So kind of what's cool too about the way that I'm trying to do it and what we've been working on for the last several years is my mission is to deliver hope, help, healing, and resources to people where they are on the devices and the platforms that they use through the people and companies they already know, trust, and follow. So we do our global live stream that I was mentioning, but we live stream on people's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitch, websites, and through them, because people who've been listening to your podcast, they know you and they trust you. So if you say, hey, go make the promise to live and share it and get involved, they're going to trust you instead of me coming on and saying, hey guys, here's what I'm dealing with and here's what you should do. So we feel like the other campaigns are good. Billboards are great. Walks are great. Like everything counts.
Yeah, everything helps. The more messages you get out on this, the better.
But if we can work through our networks, our recommendations, our face-to-face, our relationships of trust, and if we can get people to do the acronym we were working with MTV on is called ASK. And it's ASK. It's just ask somebody how they're doing. And then the A stands for acknowledge. The S stands for support. And the K is for keep in touch. So ask, acknowledge, support them. What can I do for you? What do you need? And then checking in on them. That's a big part of it. I think sometimes people are afraid to ask. Like you said, you lost a lot of friends. Well, they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to see you deal with it. They're afraid. They don't know what to do. And it's the same in this world when someone's struggling or dies by suicide. People are afraid to talk about it. And it's like, no, you don't have to be the expert, but just being a peer and letting them know that you're a safe place is huge.
Yeah, it's so misunderstood. One of the things you also mentioned there real quick, I want to, kind of follow up on was, you every person you talked about this. So you've decided to be vulnerable. You went against everything in your head, all the fears, all the, thinking of like, who's going to judge me? People are thinking I'm a bad mom. I mean, all these things you have to overcome, which most people are never going to overcome, but hopefully with foundations like yours and what we do on the show, we can kind of start to get that out a little bit. But you mentioned something which was everybody you've ever talked to has somebody that either struggling with it or they know somebody who killed themselves. I mean, this is not a small problem, right? I mean, this is, and the one thing is, it doesn't sound like to me. So with addiction, I always tell people it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter if you're the most powerful CEO in the world, or if you're the guy that is, living under the bridge and became homeless. There is no discretion. It's not like the disease of addiction and the challenge of suicide. It doesn't save itself for these people that are not doing the right thing or not working themselves, or people that are losers or whatever. I mean, anybody can fall to this. And so I think it's even more important to check in with your loved ones that you think are doing well, right? Those are the people that never get checked in on, and you hear of them killing themselves, and it's like, wow, that person, it's a pretty common thing.
It's funny you say that, because that's actually how the Pocket Hug Project started. I got a letter from an acquaintance, one of my husbands. I got remarried about 4 years ago. One of his childhood friends, she sent me a message. She goes, Brandy, I watch your social media. I see everything you're doing. She goes, but has anyone checked in on you? Like, how are you doing? And the question we tell everybody, if you really want to know how people are doing, all you have to do is add one word. How are you really doing?
Yeah, it's the really part, because you're going to get a I'm good answer. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
If you want to know how people are genuinely doing, use the word really. Chris, how are you? I'm good. I'm fine. I'm okay. Chris, how are you really? And all of a sudden it gives you that permission. But anyway, she sent me a handwritten letter that just said, hey, I see you. How are you doing? Sometimes the helpers who look like they're doing great are struggling and nobody ever checks on you. She goes, I'm checking on you. And she sent me a generic pocket hug. I'd never seen one. It was just this little thing. It had a heart on it and it said pocket hug. And it had a little poem on the back. And I put that in my pocket and I carried it around for like 4 or 5 weeks. And every time I reached in my pocket, I would just grab onto it and hold onto it. And
you're reminded. Yeah.
It was a little hug of confidence, of courage, a reminder, a tangible token of love and hope that somebody cared about me. Somebody did something nice for me. I matter. And just like Kevin was saying, if somebody would have shown me, like, we all have the ability every day to see people, to acknowledge them. And I would ask your audience at this point, reach out to the people you love today, your friends, your family, your children, your spouse, your coworkers, and ask this question. One, tell them you love them. Tell them they're on your mind. But the second thing is, hey, how are you really doing? Or have you thought about harming yourself? Like, how's your mental health? Are you suicidal? If you feel that. And a lot of parents are like, oh, my kid's not. I said, well, have you asked? No.
There's just a form. Yeah.
You won't plant the idea. Studies say you won't plant the idea. It's not going to be like, wait, mom asked me if I'm suicidal. Yeah, I think
I'm going to go do it. Yeah. It doesn't work that way.
It either they are or they aren't. And you're going to be opening up this dialogue. And so since all this that I've gone through, I have an honest conversation with my daughter, and I'll say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at today? 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. And we see what's going on and how things are. And I told you I had a good update on that. I do want to tell you, she turned 18 a few months ago. She graduated a full year ahead of schedule on the honor roll. She's building professional mascots. She did the Dallas Mavericks. She did Bumble and Cosmo, and she's working on the Chiefs mascot. She's managing a group. She bought her own apartment. 18 years old. 18.
That's cool. Yeah.
Just in October.
And, the ripple effect too, I think is so huge. I had this near-death experience, and I remember being shown what it looked like if I actually had pulled it off. And I'd pulled it off. I mean, I was floating over my dead body. It was I'd intentionally overdosed. My family had no idea where I was. I figured they didn't care about me anymore because I was never going to get back to my recovery and out of this. And so I end up making a plan and go somewhere where no one can find me. And I remember being shown what it looked like if I had done it. And I think for some of us that get in this suicidal place, that is also something big to remind people of, right? Is like, if you actually pull this off, I mean, I watched my oldest end up killing herself down the road. I watched how devastated my younger daughter was, and just how it disrupted the entire.
Wait, let me make sure I heard you right. Did you say you lost your oldest child?
No. Well, in this kind of, when I was showing an near-death experience,
okay,
I was kind of showing what would happen if I didn't choose to come back, if I was given that opportunity. And, it solidified my spirituality for sure, having something like that happen. But, and for weeks, I didn't even want to talk about the event because I thought, oh, people are going to think I'm crazy. But I couldn't deny it after some time. And now I'm very vulnerable and open about that part too. think I'm crazy or not, it doesn't matter. I know what happened and it's given me some insight that I get to share. We're here to love and support people and here to help mankind. And I love having you on the show because that's literally what you're doing. What are some of the things that you see stigma related with suicide? Like, what are the things you're fighting against, the misconceptions and the perception of suicide that you kind of add into your foundation?
Well, it's a little bit of what you said earlier. It doesn't discriminate young, old, black, white, rich, poor. I've seen it. I've seen it all from all of them.
Yeah.
I have a gal on my team. She lost all three of her sons to suicide, and her daughter is very embarrassed by that because she feels like, some shame. And I just think that, my stepsister lost both of her sons. It's the hardest thing. I believe that we live in a society where we've devalued human life. There was a girl in Germany or Switzerland or something, and she put on her Instagram, "I'm feeling depressed or sad. Should I kill myself? Vote yes or no." And 69% of her so-called friends said yes, and she did. And so I just feel like sometimes people don't have the idea of what's real and what's not. And we don't value real lives. And we have this lack of connection. We're more connected. Nate Randall from Gab Wireless says this better than anyone. He says, we're more connected than we've ever been in the history of all time, but we're less connected than we've ever been in the history of time. And that's kind of the things we are trying to tackle with this is like, okay, well, promise to live, a hug to keep, and a hug to give. We want people to get off their phones and start reaching out to people and giving them these coins and stuff. And so that's a big part of what we're doing. We do want to stop the stigma around it because, whether you're a successful CEO or struggling with homelessness, this does impact us all. I don't know one person that it hasn't. And it's okay to talk about it. And it's okay to move forward with it. So I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of things going on. People feel ashamed and embarrassed. And I would just hope that we get to a point where we can all say, and it wouldn't be taboo for me to ask you just, "Hey, Chris, how are you doing with your mental health?"
And it shouldn't be, that statement you mentioned about being connected. I mean, connection is key to anything recovery wise, right? Suicide, addictions, all of that. Connection is the opposite of addiction, right? And that's why certain programs and groups and things like that work. These support groups, people become connected to this family. But yeah, we are so disconnected and spending more time on our devices, which, people like you and I can use that to our advantage. And I don't mind sharing that. I fully intend to. If I can get across someone's social media with just a little blurb of changing their mind about a person with addiction or a person's, suicidal, or even like what you said, changing someone's mind that it's okay to check on people.
Yeah.
Right. To me, it's kind of a ridiculous thing to think that people think it's not okay to check on somebody.
Well,
you might be the only person that does.
They're going to think that, why are you asking me about that? Do you think, and people are always really,
they start to feel judged, right? The stigma. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They get really nervous about that. And so I don't know. There's just so much going on right now in mental health and with this process that it's just tricky. And I hope that people will be open and be willing to have the conversations that are needed.
Yeah, I think you're definitely on the right path and doing an amazing job from what it sounds like, it reaching as many as you can. I mean, those are some big numbers. And I love that. I really love that. You mentioned something about social media. What kind of role do you think social media plays in not only like suicide awareness, but also like the risk factors? Because I've heard quite a few stories of somebody social media problem leading to the suicide, right?
Well, the suicide rate has gone up exponentially since the social media hit the scene, right? We know that people get on there, they start isolating, they have these virtual friends, there's comparison. I mean, it's tough for adults. I find myself there and feeling, sometimes I'm mad, like, why wasn't I invited to that event? Or why wasn't this or that? And it's hard to deal with all of that. So social media has been huge. I'm a huge proponent of, Gab or limited social media, especially for youth. It's hard enough for us to manage it, let alone the younger ones.
Possible. I've got 4 teenagers in the house all at once. It is impossible to manage the social media and the phone time and all of that. It's crazy.
And we were having the conversation earlier at an event, and I really believe that there's so much good. I mean, we want to use it. We want to use it because people are on it. I use it a lot for my business and for things. but it's also so dangerous. And we do want to give people the messages where they are on their devices, but at the same point in time, like, we want to get them off their devices. Often parents will say to me, so Brandy, what signs should I look for? What
That was a
sign?
question I had. What do you look for? Yeah.
This is what they say. What should I look for with my kids? What should I look for with my friends or my coworkers or whatever? Okay, well, the signs would be, you know, emotional, pulling back, maybe starting to sell things, blah, blah, blah. Don't look for signs. Most of us are looking at our phones. Here's what I want to tell you is just ask the question. Ask the question.
Right.
Reach out to 1 or 2, 3 people a day. Every morning you get up. Randy
Absolutely.
Garn is really good at this. He says, God, who are the 3 people I need to reach out to today? But don't look for things. Be proactive, because the truth of it is, like, we don't notice much anymore.
Yeah. And the signs are, I mean, all those statistical signs are, it's not ever going to fit one situation, one person, I mean, it's just not. So I think this idea you have of reach out to everybody and see how they're doing and ask how are you really doing?
Yeah,
You
I'd
know, it's
really.
human nature to say I'm fine, but dig a little deeper than that, ask a second question, especially, I don't know if you're like me, but I kind of have I almost think it's like a sixth sense of mine where I can kind of see like what's really going on inside for somebody.
Yeah.
If they appear like they're doing well, all this stuff. I remember I had a friend that, was telling me this, and, I knew also that he had just gone through a divorce or he was facing one. And every time I would ask him for days, it was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm calling you to check on him. I'm fine. I'm fine. So one day I finally went to his house and I said, look, dude, I'm here because I want to know, like, how are you actually doing? I don't think you're fine. You're about to go through divorce after 25 years. This has got to be impacting you. I just want to let you know I'm here for you. And, he broke down and cried and we had a great conversation. And I don't want to live a life ever of regret, right? That I didn't give the message out, that I didn't try, that I didn't put myself out there in a vulnerable way to help save lives. That's probably my biggest fear, is to get to the end of my life and say, oh, I didn't try to do that when I knew it was the right thing, So what kind of outreach programs, or you mentioned a lot of resources on your website. So what are some of the outreach stuff that you have, or ways that people in the community could get involved in helping with these efforts, right?
Absolutely. So every single month we partnered with Silicon Slopes, and we do the Promise to Live Silicon Slopes monthly mental health town halls. So we have a calendar of those. We bring in amazing speakers and we provide a free lunch for people. This is a free event. Show up, get educated, because we believe, and it's open to anyone. So, I mean, obviously we get a lot of business leaders, but these people are also mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, and they're going back home and into their communities. So we're trying to bring tangible takeaways that people can have each month. That's something that people can look at. Our Pocket Hug project, we've turned this into kind of a service project where we invite church groups, other businesses or organizations or families to get some of our coins online, and then make it like a family night or a service project where you come together and you guys write these letters of hope. So we've got cards that people can use, and you can write these letters that are handwritten, heartfelt letters of encouragement. And then you think of people you want to give them to and just give those out. I keep them in my car. I give the coins out all the time. So we feel like that's a big initiative. We have our first ever gala coming up May 31st. People can come to that.
That's exciting.
Tickets.
Yeah.
And then we have our global live stream on September 10th. So go online when you make the promise and just opt in. We'll be live streaming that from Hollywood. And we're always looking for volunteers. We're always, of course, looking for sponsors and grants and alliances, things that we can collaborate on. My mission has been to create this community of collaboration where there is no competition, because there should be no competition in lives and in love. That's what we're all trying to do, is keep people alive. Yeah. Let them know that they're loved. So, anything that we can do to partner with other charitable groups or businesses, we're all about it.
Yeah, I think it's great. So if somebody wants to get more involved, can they go to your website and can they get information there as far as how to do that?
Yeah, and we're working on updating it, but promise2live.org, the number 2, that's our site. We're getting the calendar updated, but there's ways to contact us. So shoot us a contact. People can find me on Facebook. They can also find me on LinkedIn under Brandy Vega or Promise to Live. We have accounts for that. We're looking for amazing people who want to get involved and make a difference, because here's, at the end of the day, I think Da Vinci said it best. He said, I've been impressed with the sense of urgency. Knowing is not enough. Being willing is not enough. We must do. And so I've been trying
The
to go
action
through
part
it
of it.
and gather the doers, because everybody sits here and it's not just suicide awareness. Are you aware that there's a problem? Yeah, we're all aware there's a
Oh
problem.
yeah. Yeah. That's
What's actually
undeniable.
being done? What are we doing about the problem? My child tried to end their life 5 days before their appointment we waited 3 months for. And
Yeah.
those numbers have gone up. So the average wait time to see a clinician is 6 weeks to 18 months.
Way too long.
So there
Yeah.
has to be something in between. And this is what we're working on too with Promise to Live is peer support, one-on-one, asking the questions and just being there as human to human without training, but with a heart. But then there's AI, there's online courses and other things that people can get online. So between AI, online courses and training, people can at least get some form of education,
Sure.
figure
Yeah.
out how to deal with this while they're waiting for clinicians, because some of the groups we were talking to, they said there's not enough to help everybody. So don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, while you're not talking about it, people are
Yeah.
dying.
I mean,
So what can we do?
what can we do? Yeah. One of my biggest things I like to share with people also is, and this also comes to the work you're doing. So I think it is something to share with you, is like with addiction, the only thing that happens, you have about 74 million people in America that are in recovery. There's only about 2 or 3 million that have shared that outside of their family, and it's scary because you have all these silent warriors basically. And the only thing we do in our addiction when we're silent about our recovery is we literally cost people their lives. Right. And when we're silent in our addiction, we cost our own life. And it's both sides of the spectrum where we need to be able to reach out and feel comfortable doing that, So you're doing a lot of stuff for the foundation. You're helping all these people. I know as a person who also likes to help and I've really had to watch that side of me, as most of us do, as far as like the fixing or, trying to do everything for everybody. What do you do to take care of your own mental health while you're, so emotionally involved in getting this message out and building this foundation? Are there some tricks that you have figured out to kind of keep yourself centered in the midst of all the crisis?
Well, number one is my faith in God and prayer, my family and friends. So for me this year, I have 3. I have my faith, family, philanthropy. That's my focus as I move forward, as I decide that I want to focus on a life that's meaningful. But it is easy to get burned out. Last year was really a hard year for me, especially the end of the year. I love helping and I love the high. There's a thing called the helper's high. And actually people who help are 20% more likely to live longer and be happier. And so I love to do that for that reason. But the end of last year, I almost lost my mom, who's young. She's got a lot of medical problems and she had a reaction to a surgery and she lives out of state. And so I was going back and forth. And it was really scary to think, man, I almost lost my mom. She's only 66. And then my daughter, who I'd been fighting for, I'm doing this every day for her.
Right.
She's doing well. And she left me a year early. She graduated, like she's successful, but I wasn't expecting her to leave a year early. And I felt that was hard for me. Like, man, now she's gone and on her own. And then my little 7-year-old who was born in his trying circumstances in foster care with drug addiction, we've got some challenges there. And so I actually, for my own mental health, I've really pulled back, sold a business, shut another business down, moved to a different place. And I booked a 32-day cruise this year.
There you go.
And I just bought a little motor home. We're going to do a road trip. So for me, my idea of taking care of myself is really just going to be to kind of step back and keep doing the work I'm doing, but get a little bit more Christ and family centered.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And for most of my listeners listening to the show, and this is coming from a former atheist, by the way, of 15 years. God is in my life today, prayers in my life today, and it is the only thing that I have found that is so steady and works for me every single time. God will always show up for me as long as I'm vulnerable like that. And I think sharing that message too with people that if you're struggling out there, whether you're struggling with addiction or you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, realize that you can always, you don't have to get down. You can always pray. You can always say something out loud to yourself, because sometimes it's scary to reach out to another human being. And in my experience, in those darkest moments when I was able to do that, or someone maybe reminding me to do so, that alone could help pull me out to where I then had the confidence or the courage, to go and talk to somebody else and get myself more into a place of getting to treatment or whatever it looked like. And there's so many problems with the stigma with both these things we're talking about.
Oh, I know.
What are the changes that you would like to see? So you've got all these things you're doing. Obviously, some of the changes you'd like to see revolve around the work you're doing and the program and the way that you're doing all this. What are some of the changes you'd like to see from this point forward in suicide prevention?
Collaboration. I would love to see collaboration and engagement. I do want to say, just before I jump off the topic though, where can you turn for peace? Where can you turn for comfort? For me, peace in Christ, comfort knowing that you and I are sons and daughters of a God and that we are like him. And I believe that anyone who's struggling needs to know that you are a God. You have that innately in you. Your value is so high and you are so loved and you are so capable. I just want people to know how beautiful and amazing they are, no matter what the struggle or challenge is that they're fighting. So that would be my wish and my goal, is that people find peace, that they find comfort, that they love themselves. And no matter what it is you go through, you feel like you can fight through it when you've got somebody on your side. What I hope changes in the world of suicide prevention and mental health is really that people will just open up and start talking about it, that we can collaborate, that we can really open the dialogue, creating a safe place around it, just being able to talk about it. You don't have to be an expert, and people are afraid about that.
You just got to be human. I love what you said earlier. You've got to be a human. You don't need to be trained. That's why peer support is working so well for these different things with mental health. Is I would much rather sit down with somebody who has had addiction and beat it, or been through what I'm going through and gotten out of it, than ever listening to a doctor or a therapist. Sometimes, that being human element is huge.
Well, so, and if we can hate people for any reason, we can love people.
We ought to be able to love them for any reason.
I love you, that. And I love the people that are listening. And I think love is truly the answer to life. And you don't have to be an expert to do that. And sometimes you show love just by showing up, or just by listening, or picking up, or making eye contact, or just checking in. So there's a lot of good ways to do that. And it doesn't take a degree in anything but humanity.
Right. Just doing what you know is right anyways. I think, I'm going to absolutely second, third, and fourth that. When I had that near-death experience, I had asked the question, and there's a lot of pieces. So there'll be another show I'll do on the entire thing, because I want to get the message out about that. But I was told specifically, that's what we're here to do, is to love and learn how to love. And that's it. And, for anybody who's struggling out there, maybe you don't have the strength or the courage to pick up the phone or call someone or tell somebody, realize that you are trillions of a chance of the fact that you're even here alive, that you came here. And most of us came here with very specific lessons and things and reasons to come. I know, my spirit team and Christ and things were very upset with me in a way, because I wasn't living to my fullest. I wasn't out there. I was acting my addiction again, right? And just wasting my days and not sharing the message from coming from a place of sharing it. So it is hard to do that, but you can always find hope in that. And I think, Brandy, you guys have a great message. You're I didn't know how well this would line up today with our conversation, but it clearly is, right there. And you've got the same exact attitude that I do with when it comes to addiction, with suicide awareness. Before we jump off the call, I wanted to do a couple more. Just one. What are a couple things? So if somebody's currently struggling, I want to wrap up with this. A lot of people listen to the end of the shows and not always all the middle. What are a couple things, just a couple quick things somebody could take away from today's show on what they can do if they're feeling like this?
If you personally are struggling, make a promise right now to me, to whoever, to yourself, to reach out for help. Go online and make that promise, to find the places, find those AFSP, NAMI, all the different groups, Jed, Trevor. There's so many great groups, and we have those on our site. There's support groups. I've made a safety plan. Like everybody in our family's made a safety plan.
Right, yeah.
What do we do if I start going down in the depths of despair or whatever it is? It's like, if I start feeling negative, what do? I have a playlist that I listen to. I go and I try to ground myself, get my feet
right.
stand.
What tools are you using? Yeah.
Yeah, I listen to Skylight, which is a free app you can listen to that has meditations and prayers and exercise and just different things. So there's a lot of tools. It's true what they say. If you don't secure your own oxygen, you're really no good to anyone else. So first,
Absolutely.
care yourself. And then secondly, get involved. Like you're doing, sharing your story, Chris. If you are struggling with something, then use that to reach out to others, because all of a sudden you forget yourself. That's why I started volunteering at the hospital. I was going through a terrible divorce. I was feeling sorry for myself, and I just needed a way to get out of my mind and get out of my head. And when you serve other people, you do that, and
You
you feel
absolutely do it.
much better. And so
Yeah.
that would be a huge thing for me, is to say, okay, ask those around you if they're struggling. Be a friend.
Yeah.
Ask.
You know, and it's such a simple concept. It is, it's funny. Sometimes the most simple things are the hardest to do, and in recovery from addiction, one of the things that is key for anybody who's recovered is giving back, right? I feel like it's a personal obligation. It's not something we have to do. We get to do it. We get to go into the flames that we were in and take somebody else out of there. And that's what upsets me about the 74 million people in recovery. Most of them aren't talking about it. I really don't care. If I'm in line at the grocery store, I'll mention it. You know what I mean? And some people around me, that drives them nuts. They're like, oh, we don't want everyone to know. It's like, no, I want everyone to know, because I know every one of those people that I run across in my day-to-day life has something going on, or they know somebody with something going on like this, and they don't know what to do. I've had numerous calls. I remember a post I did, a few weeks back, in this mentorship group that I'm in. And I got a call about 3 or 4 weeks ago from a guy. I had no idea who it was, hysterically crying. He was about to kill himself. He was at that point, and he saw the post and said, I'm just reaching out to you because I thought it might help. And of course I told him, it's the most courageous thing you could do. And now we've been able to become pretty good friends just in a few weeks, and had him come out to Utah and spend some time, and he's, getting on the way out. But it's absolutely the simple things that we have to do, and that we get to do.
Yeah.
We got to remember that most people do not get to experience a life of service and a life of helping others. And this is why most people don't get to live a very happy life.
I've got 2 things I want to leave you with. The first one is, last month my daughter got sick, and she sent me a message and said, Mom, I'm not feeling well. Can you bring me lunch? And I was like, all right, I'm busy at work. Well, I go get lunch. And as I'm driving to lunch to get to her apartment, I pass a cemetery. And it was just like this light switched on that said, you could
Huge sign.
Here.
Right.
You're lucky you're not seeing your child at the cemetery. And I just felt super grateful. And when you mentioned that everybody's fighting something and dealing with a battle that people don't know, we all are. I was going through her first suicide attempt, and I had to show up for the biggest business deal of my entire life and pretend like I was okay. And I was not.
I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to break down into a million pieces, and I have to put on the brave face as a CEO who's got it all together and can do it all.
Sure. Yeah.
I was doing a production, and one of the guys showed up, and he was a newer guy, and he's just got a bad attitude. And I was like, why is this guy? He's a little bit late. He shows up with an attitude. He was being just kind of a jerk to everybody. And I was getting really mad at just kind of the way he was acting. I stepped away. And while I stepped away, my anger started building and building. And I just thought, I'm the senior person here. I'm going to go have a conversation with this guy, and I'm going to ask what his problem is. And as I'm angry, I start walking over there, being like, I wasn't on the same.
You got the angry walk going on.
Like I'm going over there disgruntled, frustrated. And as I go to say, Mike, what's your problem? The spirit was like, don't stop. Don't do that. And instead of saying, what's your problem? I said, are you okay? And he looked at me in the eye, and he got teary-eyed, and he said, no, actually, I'm not okay. And I said, what's going on? He said, today's the anniversary of my wife's death. And my 3 little kids were having a really hard time this morning. And it was really hard to deal with them and to get here. And it just changed everything for me. I think about that all the time. Every time I want to give somebody a piece of my mind, choose to give them a piece of your heart. Choose kindness, give grace, lead with love, because we don't know what anyone else is going through. We don't know if they just lost the person that they love. We don't know if they're fighting to stay alive. We have no idea what's going on. So I challenge you, I challenge me, and I tell myself this every day, especially when I'm driving in Utah. Please, give grace, and lead with love. And that's what I'd like to leave with you is there are people out there every day. They just need kindness and love. Show up for them. Think of the people you love. I went to a funeral last week. I'm going to a celebration of life this week for somebody who's 40 years old.
Crazy.
If that person could have heard all the nice things that were said at their funeral, maybe there wouldn't have been a funeral.
Absolutely.
So use your words, use your heart, find the peace you need, give the love and the peace. Choose kindness, give grace, lead with love. Go and make the promise to live. We need you. There's work for you. We love you. And just keep up the fight.
I love that. I love that message. That's a great one to wrap up with. And it really is, what's interesting to me is like the whole driving thing. That is my go-to now. When I don't ever get rid of road rage. I just think in my mind, maybe they're rushing to an emergency room. Maybe that's a surgeon who needs to go perform a critical surgery. Maybe they're rushing, because I've been in these spaces where I've been the one rushing to the hospital to see if my daughter's okay, right?
Yeah, 95 miles an hour down I-15.
Yeah, and the craziest thing to me, and we can end with this, is that it is so much easier to be kind, loving, and helpful. It's easier on your body, it's easier on your energy, it's easier on your soul than it is to be angry, resentful, and fearful. And I think if people can make that connection to start to step over the other side, even a day a week, or just at moments during the day, it's world-changing stuff. So again, Brandy, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this. This is huge. I'm so glad that we made the connection, and I know we'll be doing some other things together. And if you're listening to the show again today and you're struggling, again, go to Brandy's website, Promise to Live. That's Promise to Live, the numeric 2, correct, Brandy? And make that promise to live. If you're somebody who has lost somebody to suicide, you want to give back, reach out to her as well. I'm sure there's some things that she can do to put you to work. And in regards to the show, the Let's Do More show, this is a great topic for Let's Do More. Please get out there, share the show, download the show, like it. It's not for my benefit. This isn't a money-making show. This is a show that's all about doing the right thing. And the more that this message gets out to people, the more lives will get saved from what we talked about today. So again, Brandy, super grateful. Thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting you in person soon.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Let's Do More. I hope you found inspiration, hope, and some powerful takeaways to help you on your own journey of growth and resilience. Remember, no matter what you're facing, you have the strength to overcome it and the power to create positive change in your life and community. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, download, and review the podcast. It really helps us reach more people who need to hear these stories. And don't forget to follow us on social media and stay connected and be part of the Let's Do More community. You can find us on Facebook at Let's Do More Podcast, Instagram and TikTok at Let's Do More.life, X at Let's Do More Life, and our primary channel is on YouTube at Let's Do More. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, share your stories, or let us know what topics you'd like to hear about next. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, remember, let's keep pushing forward, inspiring each other, and doing more for ourselves and the world around us. Take care, and I'll see you on the next show.